Okay, so we are now up to the 9 o'clock shiur. We still have going the 10 and 11. For those with stamina, 10 o'clock, Rabbi Ziering will be speaking about coffee and halacha. The 11 o'clock shiur, I will be doing an introduction to slichos. So the opportunities remain. But that makes this number 17 of our shiurim today. And the topic is parenting from the Torah. Once again, I am grateful to Yeshivat Or Chaim for hosting the entire 18-hour shiur. It's been very good of them. I'm grateful to Peter for doing the webcast the entire day here. Quite amazing work. He's actually I've been in and out. Gave a shiur, stopped giving a shiur, gave a shiur, stopped giving a shiur, and he's just here, constantly staffing the camera. This was built on a program done by Rabbi Shlomo Einhorn in California, and he had 3 camera crews. We just got Peter. He's got it all. I also want to thank the major sponsors for the program. That is the Weinbaum Foundation and David and Serena Kashitsky, who are sponsoring in memory of Riva Kashitsky, Zichrona Livracha. This program overall is also a fundraiser for our program for university students. We have learning opportunities for male university students here every morning, and we have opportunities for female university students over at Ulpanat Orot that we run in tandem with the Ulpanat and JLIC. Also every morning, we have a $10,000 matching fund. And I think we have matched to this point somewhere around $8,500 to $9,000 of that of the $10,000. So this should be good. It will really go a long way to helping with this. Okay, parenting from the Torah, the issue of sibling rivalry. So honestly, I feel inadequate presenting on this topic. I was nervous about speaking about the previous topic because of the great ramifications, but the ramifications here aren't so small either. And I feel inadequate because I wasn't the best sibling growing up, and my wife, who may be watching this, is a far better parent than I am. But this was actually requested. So, someone asked for this. So here goes. This forum is not going to be a place where we're going to answer all questions, and it's not going to be a place where we provide quick and easy solutions. The Torah does not give such clear advice, and each family dynamic is unique. And I want to point to a statement by Rav Aaron Lichtenstein. It is classic Rav Aaron in terms of his common sense approach to Torah and halacha. Take a look at source number 1. In an article titled "On Raising Children." It's actually he gave a shiur and then someone adapted the shiur into the article. He said, "These things are not in textbooks. You will not find instructions about what kind of mixture to have between the assertion of authority on the one hand and warmth and love on the other. People often presume that halacha has the answer to everything. Press the right key, push the right button, open up to the right page, look it up, and it's there. And if it is not there, it's only because we haven't gotten around to it yet. You have the misfortune of being born 20 years before somebody who will write the answer to your question. But if you wait 20 years, the answer will be there." That's what people often assume. Hafoch ba v'hafoch ba dekula ba, we say in Pirkei Avos. Turn it over, everything is in it. He says this attitude is absolutely incorrect. We do not do any favors, not the Mishnah, but the attitude. We do not do any favors to God or to the world of halacha by pretending that it has what it does not have and what, from my point of view, it does not need to have and does not want to have. Though the world of Torah is rich and demanding, though it encompasses so many areas of human life, it does not have the precise answer to everything. And this is true in some of the most significant areas of human life. He wrote the same thing in the beginning of an article on marriage, where he was also asked to give advice from the Torah on marriage, and he said, you can't find everything there within the Torah. And indeed, think about it. How many peaceful, forget positive, we're not going to go for positive. How many peaceful sibling relationships can we actually find in the Torah? Go for it.
Moshe and Aaron.
Moshe and Aaron, good. Ephraim and Menashe, good. Yosef and Binyamin, we don't know a whole lot, except that Yosef shows him favor as the brother who didn't sell him when he comes down to Egypt. You didn't sell me. All right, that's peaceful. Yisachar and Zvulun, maybe. Shimon and Levi. right? They get along just fine. Just don't get in their way. We don't have a whole lot of good ones. How about the bad ones? Yaakov and Esav. Cain and Hevel. Right? Killing your sibling. Definitely a bad one. Got peaceful after that. Yaakov and Esav, Cain and Hevel, Rachel and Leah, the brothers and Yosef, Amnon and Tamar, Adoniyahu and Shlomo, Yitzchak and Yishmael. You don't have a whole lot of good ones when you compare it to the problematic ones. So when you start talking about parenting from the Torah, you have to ask yourself, what exactly can we get? I think we can get some applicable principles from Torah sources, but you really have to be careful to not argue beyond your evidence. And I think that's very important because of the wishful thinking component of we're going to look in and we're going to find. You have to really know what you're working with. So in order to address this, I want to start out by asking, what is it that is so important about sibling relationships? Why do we care so much beyond, as parents, wanting sanity in our lives and wanting to know that our children are safe from each other? Why is it that we care so much about sibling relationships? I am not going to be the only one talking for this hour.
They influence further generation.
They influence further generations, meaning?
Meaning that if your children see that their parents do not have a good relationship with their siblings, that will affect their relationship and it can affect their children's relationship.
So in other words, what they're going to model for the next generation. So
A lot of times, we reflect our own parenting skills based on how our children get along with each other. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times it's just a reflection of how we're doing as parents.
So it just means we look bad.
No, it's not looking bad. It's not a question of looking bad. But if your kids don't get along, somehow you feel as a parent, you feel that somehow you failed.
You just feel like I must not have done something right. Okay.
I feel like it's sort of fundamental in Judaism because we're an am. What is an am? It's all one family, and you got to learn how to get along with people who you disagree with, or the whole concept of a nation disappears.
Right. So it's at the core of our identity as a nation. I mean, the argument in response would be, I do just fine with people who aren't related to me, or who are related to me in a more distant way. Yeah. Cousins, no problem. Siblings are tough.
But we're called the 12 Shvatim. These are we have to be siblings first.
Right, and there's actually a lot to be said about that. That identification as 12 Shvatim, as 12 tribes, you pointed out as something that identifies our relationship with each other. But in truth, you have to think, the Jews, as the Medrash reports, go through Yam Suf, right? Not in one mass, but rather 12 channels through the sea. Why does each one get its own channel? Why are you reinforcing division? Why not just send them all together? We camp around Har Sinai, right? Around the Mishkan after that, and each tribe is off to itself. You're sort of building in some of the division element and some of maintaining our differences. I like to think of it as the Canadian multicultural approach. Each shevet, each tribe is going to have its own identity. It will not be a melting pot of one big national identity. There's something to be said for that. I think there are a few points, some of which have been said. Number one, I think part of it really is the immediate crisis, right? It's Sarah's fear for Yitzchak leading her to evict Yishmael. Somebody here is a threat, and I need to just make sure my kids are safe. Some of it is not even about the parenting that leads to the sibling rivalry, as much as the rest of the parenting job. I can't parent my children properly. I can't raise them properly if I'm spending all my time in crisis management trying to keep them apart and solve their disputes or help them learn to solve their disputes. So that's part of it. Part of it really is, and this goes a little bit back towards the discussion about them and modeling for their children, a matter of utility. Siblings can be allies and a support system for a lifetime, hopefully beyond the life of the parents. If you look within the Torah for examples, you find positive ways in which some of the tribes stood up for each other. My favorite example of this is one that people don't often think of, and that's Yehuda and Shimon. Where is the first time that Yehuda takes care of Shimon? Yeah?
Volunteers goes to jail for him.
Volunteers go to jail for him. Earlier. The first time Yehuda takes care of Shimon. when Yosef shows up, right? The Torah says when Yosef shows up with his brothers, Vayomer ish el achiv. One said to his brother, Hine bal hachalamos halazeba. The dreamer has showed up. Let's kill him. So who is the one who said to his brother? Who is the one who says that?
It's not Shimon, it's Shimon and Levi.
Shimon and Levi, says the Medrash. How does the Medrash know it's Shimon and Levi? So they do a little math, and they figure it out this way. We know it wouldn't have been the kids of Bilhah and Zilpah, because the beginning of the parsha says Yosef hung out with them. They're actually on the same team. So it's only going to be from the kids of Leah. It's not going to be Reuven, because Reuven tries to sabotage the effort, right? Reuven is the one who says, don't kill him, throw him in the pit, right? It's not going to be Yehuda, because Yehuda sabotages the effort, and he says, don't leave him in the pit, let's sell him. And it's not going to be the younger two, Yisachar and Zevulun. It's not going to be those, because those are younger. They wouldn't have spoken up in front of their elders like that. Plus, Shimon and Levi have a history. Right? Shimon and Levi were the ones who wanted violence against Shechem. They're the ones who get punished by Yaakov. And Yaakov even seems to hint that they did this to Yosef. When he says, Ba'apam hargu ish b'rtzonam ikru shor, they tried to kill a man, they uprooted the ox being one of the signs of Yosef. So that leads to the sense that it's Shimon and Levi who are the ones. So Shimon is the one who says, let's kill Yosef. And ultimately, it's first Reuven and then Yehuda, really Yehuda, who saves him from it. He says, you know what, let's not kill him. Let's just sell him. Mind you, selling your sibling is not something I want anybody to do. I have 2 children present. I'm putting myself on the record here. I'm on livecast. Selling your sibling is not a good idea. Nonetheless, the point is that Yehuda saves Shimon from being a killer. That's the first time. Second time, Shimon is being held in jail. And how is he going to get out? How is Shimon supposed to get out of jail? What has to happen? Binyamin has to come. Binyamin can't come. Yaakov won't send him. Yehuda says, I'll take care of him. It's on my head. It's on my head. I'm going to get Shimon out of jail by bringing down Binyamin and bringing Binyamin back safely. That's the second time.
In the text, at least, it's never expressly stated because of Shimon, but rather because they were lacking.
Because they're starving, right. Shimon could just stay there forever. You're right. It's not stated that way. And then the third time, when the land is divided up. When they divide up the land, Yaakov, remember, said, Achalakeim b'Yaakov v'afitzeim b'Yisrael. He said of Shimon and Levi, I'm going to scatter them. So Levi doesn't get a portion. He gets cities here and there. But where does Shimon get land in the end? In Yehuda. Shimon gets a plot of a segment of cities within Yehuda. Yehuda ends up looking after Shimon. I bring this as an example, albeit somewhat dramatic example, but dramatized, I should say, example, but of the way that the sibling relationship can actually play out going forward with one looking for the other. And that's another reason for it. Another is because we want them to be positive influences for each other. We want siblings to be a positive influence on each other. If they're fighting with each other constantly, that ain't going to happen. And then a note from Rabbi Dr. Twersky. I'm a fan of everything that he writes. And in his work, Positive Parenting, which I really found very helpful, take a look at source number 3. He notes the issue of the home as the place where we learn relationships. He says, it's actually co-written by Rabbi Dr. Twersky and Dr. Ursula Schwartz. I shouldn't only credit him. But they write, first we need to keep in mind that in raising a child, the relationship among the siblings, sorry about that, my spell check didn't catch that, the relationship among the siblings in the family constitutes an important influence of development. Siblings can teach each other many things, both good and bad. Because siblings spend considerable time in each other's presence, it is important that most of their interactions be positive or neutral. Having siblings gives a child a chance to practice many social competencies and social problem-solving skills. Sibling relationships are more than just getting along, and it's not enough to tell our kids, be nice to your brother and sister. We need to make it our business as parents to teach our children to engage in interpersonal problem-solving and amicable ways of relating. This takes time and may try parents' patience and ingenuity, but it is an important component of parenting. He says, the way you deal with your siblings is the way that you will deal with others in the broader world. And that's part of a general philosophy that they have regarding life. I gave a Dvar Torah on Shabbos about the issue of the Ben Sorer Umoreh, and talked about it in the context of addiction. How the Ben Sorer Umoreh, the rebellious child, is presented in the Torah with classic symptoms of addiction, where he eats meat, but not like special high-quality meat. He'll take whatever meat he can get his hands on. He drinks alcohol, but whatever he can get his hands on, not a particular kind. He steals, but he steals from his parent because the money is there and available, and our fear is that in his desire to feed this addiction, he's ultimately going to kill somebody in order to feed the hunger that he has. So here I drew again on ideas from Rabbi Dr. Twersky, where he talked about how one of the problems of addiction, because addiction is complicated and serious and not something that you can just turn into a soundbite, but one of the causes of addiction is an inability to create happiness for oneself. Sometimes you tell somebody just stop or just say no or something along those lines. That's not enough. The child needs to learn how to make herself happy. And if the parent's solution is simply to yell at the child, or if the parent's solution is simply to say, don't worry, I'll take care of it for you, then the child in the home does not learn those methods of coping that are so critical when you become an adult. The home is supposed to be the place where you pick up the skills that are going to help you for life. So too when it comes to the sibling relationship. That's why this matters so much to us. So okay, how do we deal with it? So I think the first part of it has to be recognizing what is fueling the rivalry between the siblings. When we have siblings who are not getting along, and it's more than just that occasionally there's a fight, this one does this and then it irritates me, but there is a rivalry. There's a challenge in which each one feels the need to one-up the next. They feel the need to show that they're greater than the next. What is it that causes it? What fuels this rivalry? Your turn.
They want their parents' attention.
They want attention. That's often a problem. What else?
Self-esteem.
Self-esteem.
Low self-esteem.
Right? They're frustrated with themselves. Maybe they don't have a vision of themselves that's positive, and so they're looking for it from somewhere, and they're going to demand it from the parent and from the world at the expense of the sibling. That could be.
The sibling provides a standard of success or achievement.
The sibling provides a standard of success, and therefore?
In order for them to achieve their own self-worth, they have to outpace the sibling.
Right. And by the way, these are all adult phenomena also. This isn't only when, you have small children. We see this with adult siblings, very much as well. The competition, the need for approval, and so forth. I brought you the classic Maslow's hierarchy of needs in source number 4. I hope you can read it. The bottom one is probably a little too dark, the nature of black and white copying. But the hierarchy of needs is Maslow's attempt to show you which needs are most important for people and then have to be taken care of first. And then as you work your way up the pyramid or the triangle, depending on whether you think in 3 dimensions, as you work your way up, you get to things that are less immediate as a need, although these are needs too. So the first and most basic need is physiological. You have to make sure that you're fed. You have to make sure that you are safe. You have to make sure that you are comfortable. Those are your first just basic physical care. Safety, love and belonging, esteem, self-actualization when you get all the way up to the top. Each child is concerned about the resources that they have, bless you, in terms of achieving these items that are in the pyramid. And they're concerned about whether their parents or whatever the resource is are going to provide it for them. That goes back to the issue of needing the respect of the parent, the love of the parent, feeling like it's being siphoned off by the other sibling. That's one element. Another element is simple frustration with the sibling's behavior, right? Being frustrated with the way the sibling is acting towards them. Another element is insensitivity to the sibling, right? Very often, it isn't about sibling rivalry at all. It's simply about an inability to recognize that my sibling is a human being too, that they have the same feelings that I do, the same thoughts that I do. And then you have the indirect causes. frustration at the trouble that they have with their sibling relationship. Maybe they don't have a vision of success, of themselves as succeeding in this relationship. They don't know how this can ever be good, right? I grew up as one of 4 kids, the oldest of whom was 5 years older than the youngest. I was in the middle. But there are only 5 years between the oldest sibling and the youngest sibling. And there could be periods of time when there's rivalry in the relationship, and rivalry, because there were 3 boys in this, can be violent. And you have no vision that it's ever going to be any different. It's like bedtime, right? Where bedtime is just going to be the same thing every night that it's always been. It's going to be a fight. I don't want to go to bed. I'm hungry. I want this. I want that. I can't sleep, and so on and so forth. Or the homework struggles, or meal struggles, or whatever it is. They don't know any other way. This is the way we relate. This is our relationship. That's who we are. This is how we relate to each other. And sometimes that leads to disappointment, to confusion, to frustration with themselves, because they think that they're good people. They know they're supposed to be good people, but it's not working. And that in turn can feed the low self-esteem cycle. I don't think I'm telling you anything you don't know. I have no illusions about what I'm presenting. The only thing that I do hope to maybe somehow provide are some Torah sources that will address some of this, as we move into how we solve the problems that we're talking about. So first of all, in terms of their individual needs, the simple and obvious way that you address the problem, if you can, of them feeling like they're not having their needs met is by making sure that you are providing in a realistic way. And you can't feed every request. There are requests that are unrealistic. But making sure that you're providing for their needs, devoting the time and resources for their development. And I bring you here Rav Aaron Lichtenstein to make you all feel like bad parents. Take a look, please, at source number 5 from the same essay by Rav Aaron. He says, "When my sons were in high school, I used to devote several nights a week to learning with them. Once I met one of the Ramim at their high school, and he remarked, 'What a wonderful thing! As busy as you are, you find time to come learn with your sons.' I looked at him and couldn't understand. If I can't find time to learn with my sons, for what will I find time? What is my time for?" Of course that's what it's for. I didn't actually bring you the full quote. I probably should have brought you the rest of the quote and figured out a way to fit everything on the page. He then goes on to say, the Ram didn't seem to really understand what I was talking about, so I dropped it. What he's trying to say is, that's first claim on my time. That's my responsibility, and that's something that Rav Aaron spends a lot of time talking about in his essay. Is that the responsibility of chinuch is not about teaching them to pick up a lulav and then you're done. It's about the development of their personality, and that's part of what the parent has to spend time on. Take a look, please, at source number 6. He says, in a broader sense, beyond the technical and beyond even personality development, he says, in a broader sense, though, chinuch has to do with the molding of the identity and personality of the child. That itself breaks into 2 aspects. One aspect is the development of certain spiritual strengths, certain powers, skills, abilities, inclinations, and sensitivities. In trying to make a respectable person out of the boy or girl, the parents ask themselves, to what extent can and should we mold the child, and in which direction? Once the parents understand what the aims are, they can try to answer these questions. That's one aspect. And then flip the page. There is a second, more relational aspect of the broad sense of chinuch. This entails developing what the Greeks called, I didn't look up the pronunciation, paideia, I believe, eliciting from the personality of the child that which is already there. Moreover, this means developing not powers, but rather attitudes, relationships, commitments, involvement, and engagement. For example, part of chinuch is teaching the child the ability to relate to others. If you look around you, you see that some people have the skill of relating to others, while others cannot relate to a colleague, a child, or a spouse. Teaching a child to relate does not just mean giving him or her a certain skill set in the realm of personal relationships. It also means teaching one how to relate to God, to one's immediate environs, to one's collective and national identity, to the past and the future, and to the world at large. All of this is part of chinuch, and boy, am I in trouble as a parent at this point, because look what he's just put on my shoulders. I have to teach them how to do mitzvos. I have to teach them as well how to develop their personality in whatever direction is appropriate for who they are. Making a respectable person, as he put it, out of the boy or girl. I also have to help them develop the way that they are going to relate to God, how they're going to relate to other people, how they're going to relate to, well, pretty much everything at this point in terms of his discussion. There's no hope at all. I'm done. The point that I bring this for is to show the amount of time that he expects to be put into this, and that he views all of this as part of the parent's mitzvah. This is my mitzvah. If this is my mitzvah, I can't use the time that I'm supposed to be using for this for other things, even for mitzvos, right? We have a basic rule, right? The basic rule is you are involved in one mitzvah, you're patur, you're exempt from other mitzvos. If the time that I need in order to train these children properly is going to come at the expense of me learning Torah, me doing some community project and being involved in chesed or whatever it is, too bad. Because that's fundamentally my responsibility. And I will go one step further than what you see here in Rivalry, because I believe that this is very true, even if I fail to live it on a daily basis. Nonetheless, I believe that it is very true. And that is, this is an obligation which is incurred like a debt when you have a child. It's a debt that is there from the very beginning. And when you have a debt, you don't have the option of telling your creditor, well, I wanted to do something else with the money. I decided, I know, I owe you money, and I'll get around to paying you, but I wanted to use the money for something else first. You don't have the option of doing that, even if the other use you have for the money is a fine use. You owe money, you pay it back. And the same thing is true in terms of the obligation to one's children. Again, I don't think I'm saying anything terribly novel. I don't think I'm saying anything that's going to surprise anybody here. And I see people here who have been parents longer than I have raised kids beyond where I have, and no doubt could be better than I am standing here giving this. But no one else made the commitment, so I'm here. But that's what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the duty that one has to the child to feed the needs of that child. That's sort of number one in terms of dealing with this. Number two, and again, this is something you don't really need me to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, is the issue of avoiding anything that could feed into the rivalry. And not comparing them when you praise them, not comparing them when you criticize them, and lest you say, well, everybody knows that. You look in the beginning of the Torah, right? What's the first case of sibling rivalry? You mentioned it before. Cain and Hevel. How is it worded when Cain gets angry? What does the Torah say? When Cain is angry, it says, "Vel Cain vel minchaso lo sha'a," right? Hashem did not turn to Cain, right? Hashem didn't turn to Cain, he turned instead to Hevel, and he says, Lama charalach, why are you so angry? V'lama naflu fanecha, why did your face fall? Haloim teitiv se'es, if you do good, then things will be good. V'im lo seitiv la pesach hatas rovates, and if not, then sin crouches by the door, and so on. What Hashem tries to do with Cain and Hevel is to tell Cain, here's this vision for how you can be good. But fundamentally, Cain is comparing himself with his brother. It's not bad enough God didn't turn to me, but he turned to Hevel. And we have to be very careful about that, about not making the comparison. And if you need to give special treatment, explain why. Because kids need special treatment. It's not as though all your kids are the same and have the same needs. There will be kids who are going to need to go with you to a ball game more than some other child is going to need. There's going to be a child who's going to need reading time. There's going to be a child who's going to need physical therapy. There's all these different things that children are going to need, and each child is going to hopefully get whatever their unique needs are, and it's going to involve extra attention by the parent, extra spending by the family, and you'll be doing what you're supposed to do. So on this one, I have a Gemara. If you take a look at source number 7, the Gemara is the one that makes the comment on this. It's talking about Yosef and the brothers. After the brothers already know that he is Yosef, Yosef gives them gifts of clothing. So it says he gave to all of them, l'chulam nasan lo ish chalifos simalos. He gave to each changes of clothing. Ulevinyamin nasan, but to Binyamin he gave chamesh chalifos simalos, 5 changes of clothes. And you read the story and you think to yourself, what in the world is wrong with you, Yosef? Right? I mean, really? You didn't pick up on how you ended up here in the first place. It's like, you're going to give Binyamin a special 5? What are you thinking? Yeah.
Wasn't he also testing them to see if they were going to react to him treating the other more favorably?
If he's testing them, is that a good idea or a bad idea?
Well, he wants to see if they've changed.
Right. Is that a good idea or a bad idea?
It's a bad idea, but it's still necessary for him.
Why is it necessary? He already saw that they changed. Right? The key for Yosef in this whole saga of what he does with his brothers and the game that he plays and everything else, his whole manipulation leads to the point where the children of Leah once again have a child of Rachel who seems to have done a terrible thing and to have endangered all of them. And the question is, are we going to sell him out or not? Right? Binyamin is now the original Yosef, and instead Yehuda gets up and says, I'm not going to sell him out. He seems to have done a terrible thing. He looks like a thief. I'm not going to sell him out. And now he knows, okay, at least Yehuda knows better than he did last time. Yeah.
He wants to make sure we're lost, and also Yehuda made a prior commitment to Yaakov. So you could say maybe it's because of that, and that's why he's...
So he really has to push it further? I mean, yes, it could be. It could be, but I think that this is a very dangerous game for him to play. You know, he's not dealing with a controlled situation here. If things go wrong, they're going to go very wrong. So let's see what the Gemara thinks is going on. Can it be that the righteous one who was pained in this manner would now stumble in the same thing? For Rava Bar Machsia said, because of the 2 measures of silk which Yaakov added for Yosef over his brothers, right, the ketonet pasim, the striped tunic, the matter developed and our ancestors descended to Egypt. Right? It didn't really happen only because of that. But that's what we're saying. That's the catalyst. That's the trigger. Right? Binyamin Bar Yefet explained, Yosef hinted to Binyamin that he would have a descendant who would go out before the king in 5 royal garments, as it is written, and Mordechai went out in royal garb. He was trying to send a special message to Binyamin about the future. This is a nevuah, this is a prophecy. Now, if I read it in its own right, I think, wow, that's really interesting. It's true, he has a descendant who is known as Ish Yemini, the descendant of Binyamin, and look, he gets the 5 garments, and look, it's a nice match, and all that. But the Maharsha says, Rav Shlomo Edel says, on this, it's not saying that it was just this little subtle thing that nobody would have noticed. Yosef actually explains to the brothers, this is why I'm doing this. He doesn't leave it out there as something he's doing because it has some import to it, but he's not going to tell you why. He actually explains what he's doing with the clothing. And I think that's true in general. If you're going to treat one child in a certain way that's better than giving them something unique, you have to explain. Now, you have to explain it in an age-appropriate way. Right? If I start explaining to one of the children that the other one is getting something special because he has anger management issues or because whatever it is, then I'm doing a terrible thing. I'm now handing them problems. So it has to be done in the right way to explain that each one will be dealt with differently. But that's one point. In terms of their rivalry for resources, they have to know that you're going to do what you need to do in order to provide them with their needs. And when you need to give them special treatment, you have to explain it. Second, teach them to recognize the sibling as a person with feelings. We said one of the problems is just a natural insensitivity, right? The pasuk in Koheles. Who feels anything except for me? Mi achush chutz mimeni. I am the only one with feelings. So you have to teach them to recognize that in the sibling, right? Like the Torah says, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Right? Love your neighbor as yourself. Recognize that your neighbor is like yourself. You have to teach them that sensitivity. It doesn't come naturally. And then third is to help them manage the frustration that they feel with the behavior of their siblings. And part of that comes from managing their expectations. It's not sufficient to say to them, you're right, the other one is wrong, whatever it is, but in order to help them deal with this, help them to know what is reasonable to expect. I heard a lecture once from Rabbi Yisrael Reisman of New York on Yirmiyahu, and how in the beginning of Yirmiyahu, we find that he complains over this very minor thing about frustration in his prophecy. And then later on in his career, they chain him up and they throw him in jail and everything else, and not a word of complaint. He's not upset at all. And Rabbi Reisman's suggestion was that it's because he's changed his expectations. Once Yirmiyahu got into it and he dealt with the Jewish people for a while, he started to understand this is the way he's going to be dealt with. And so he didn't expect good treatment. He didn't expect them to listen to him. So what you have to do is manage the expectations that they have for the other. But here is a really important point. And again, like everything I've said, I keep stressing, I know I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. But with this one, with this point, I do find that people violate this on a regular basis. So even though everybody knows it, people have a hard time following it. And you see it happen quite frequently. There's a conversation between two people. There's a falling out that goes on between two people. And now their friends want to get them to make up, right? You want to get them to be friends again. So you go to one of them and you say, yeah, I know, he was being unrealistic. He wasn't really doing what he should have done, and that's why. And I get it, and it was inappropriate, and whatever. You say to him, he really went where he shouldn't have gone with that. And you go to the other one, and you say, yeah, he was unrealistic. It was an inappropriate thing for him to do, and that's just who he is. You have to know when you're dealing with him, that's the kind of guy you get, right? You've heard conversations like this. People have conversations like this. Maybe you've participated in conversations like this. I want to show you something subtle in source number 8. Medrash and Avos Rabbi Nassan. This is about Aharon HaKohen. We have within the Navi, we have a pasuk, Ki sifsei Kohen yishmeru das. The lips of the Kohen will guard das, wisdom. V'Torah yivakshu mipiyu. They will seek Torah from his mouth. And as the pasuk goes along, he will return people from sinning. And this is all a pasuk that we understand to refer to Aharon. Aharon is somebody who leads people towards Torah. He leads people away from sin. Take a look at source number 8. If two people had a quarrel, Aharon would go sit by one of them, and he would say the following, my son, see what your friend is doing. He beats his heart and tears his clothing, saying, woe is me! How can I raise my eyes and see my friend? I'm embarrassed before him, for I was the one who sinned against him. Aharon would sit with him until he had removed all jealousy from his heart. Aharon would then go sit by the other one, and he would say, my son, see what your friend is doing. He beats his heart, he tears his clothing, saying, woe is me, how can I raise my eyes and see my friend? I'm embarrassed before him, for I was the one who sinned against him. It's better in the original, but I didn't want to go over one sheet, so I just included my translation. You can see the original by looking it up. So Aaron would sit with him until he had removed all jealousy from his heart. When the two met, they would hug and kiss each other. Therefore, it is written, the entire Jewish people cried for Aaron for 30 days after he passed away. It's a great story. It's also good for situation comedies when people try this and then the two meet and they find out that Aaron's a liar. And you wonder sort of how he got away with doing this. But look at the lesson that it's trying to teach us about making peace between people. What does Aaron say about each one to the other?
The other one is remorseful.
The other one is remorseful, but the other one's a good guy. Right? The other one is a good guy who feels bad. He's crying in pain over what he caused. He feels terrible about what he has done. He paints him not as a bad guy, right? Yeah, he's a bad guy, and that's the way it is when you deal with him, and you have to know that. He paints him as a good guy. He's really good. He feels bad about the mistake that he made. What Avos Rabbi Nassan is giving us, I think, is a very important and positive framework for how to deal with this when you're dealing with other people, and certainly when you're dealing with siblings. Because otherwise, you know what happens? If the way you deal with it, whether with people in general or with siblings, if the way you deal with it is to say to them, yeah, I know, he's unrealistic, he's whatever, he's a hard person to work with, you know what you do? Especially as a parent, you license them to do it. Once the parent can say something negative, then what's wrong with me saying something negative? If the parent can say, he's cranky, he's irresponsible, he's whatever it is, then I can say it too. So it's really important that the parent model the positive way of framing it when trying to make peace between them. Again, not saying anything people don't know, but this one I've actually seen people violate time and time again. So this one I feel like I may add something to make it worth your trip tonight. That's in terms of the direct problems, right? The direct problems are that they want resources, particularly parental attention. You're right, you have to devote an awful lot of time to them. They need to recognize their sibling as a person with feelings, help them to do so. And they're frustrated with the behavior of the sibling, manage the expectations, but do it without putting down the other sibling in the relationship. Don't give them license to look down on the other. What about the indirect problems? The frustration that they feel with themselves when they're stuck in this rut. So first of all, very important, you validate what they're feeling, the frustration that they have. Let them talk about it. I showed you the pasuk in Mishlei in source number 9. There's a verse in Mishlei which very often is misquoted because the Gemara gives you license to do so. The pasuk says, the verse as it's properly vocalized in your standard Tanakh, in source number 9, De'aga b'leiv ish yashchena v'davar tov yisamachena, which the Gemara offers you two reads. The first read that it offers you, where I gave you number 1 there, is the grammatical read of the sentence. When there is worry in a person's heart, he should remove it. A good word will gladden it. If you're worried, get rid of your worry. Smile and the world smiles with you, or some such thing. Turn that frown upside down and all the nice things that you can say. However, the Gemara offers you a second read, which is, Da'aga b'leiv ish, it's reading it as yasichena, or yaschena maybe. When worry is in a person's heart, he should speak of it. Let people talk it out. Let them have that conversation. When the child comes to you and says, I am angry because my sibling did X, you can't squelch it. They have to have the opportunity to vent. They have to have the opportunity to feel like they've actually been heard. And that's, I think, an important point because, frankly, speaking for myself, as someone who has absolutely no time, because I'm preparing, 10 shiurim for today, so it's very tempting to simply say either, look, work it out, or to say, my children, stop me if you've heard this one, or to say, look, this is what you have to do, as opposed to letting them actually go through to the end of the sentence and explain the problem and explain how they feel about it. They have to have the opportunity to vent it. And then the other piece of it is to build up their self-esteem by giving them your time and attention. Take a look at source number 10. I pulled it from the University of Florida's extension that deals with parenting and family issues, where they say, and again, I don't think they're saying anything you don't know, a healthy self-concept is the foundation for the positive development and overall well-being of a child. When a child has a healthy self-concept, he sees himself as being loved, loving, and valuable. A child with a healthy self-concept is also better able to reach his full potential. He does better in school. He's better able to set goals for himself and make decisions. He's more willing to learn new things, to try new activities. With a healthy self-concept, a child has better relationships with family members and friends. He can control his behavior and get along with others. And again, I feel better when I read this. Because when I think of my own parenting thoughts and I think about the fact that everybody knows them, it gets me down. But then I read the fact that what they're saying is also stuff that everybody knows. So I feel a little bit better about that. But take a look at source number 11, because I come back to Aharon again in this Medrash in Avos Rabbi Nassan. When Aharon was walking on the road, he encountered a wicked man and he greeted him. The next day, I don't know what road this was in the Midbar, in the wilderness. So we'll take road with a grain of salt. But he encounters a wicked man and he greets him. The next day, that man wants to transgress. He says, woe is me! How could I raise my eyes afterward and see Aharon? I would be embarrassed before him. He greeted me, right? The Kohen Gadol, right? The holiest, most pure, go into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur, welcomed me, said Shalom Aleichem, shook my hand. What am I going to do when I see him again? It sort of puts me in mind, actually, of one of my shiurim from earlier this morning, my second shiur this morning, Rav Kook. Rav Kook talked about how the people who transgress feel anxiety over it. And he says, you can tell from someone's demeanor, you can tell from his handwriting, you can tell from the way he expresses himself. You can see if someone's anxious because they've done something wrong. You can read it in them, which makes it very scary to think about talking to Rav Kook. But that's exactly the point. when this person has the opportunity to do something wrong, he thinks, I have the respect of Aharon. He greeted me. What am I going to do the next time he sees me? How in the world am I going to look him in the eye if I'm going to go do this thing that's wrong? It's the guilt side of self-esteem, I suppose, in a sense. You give them enough self-esteem that now they're afraid of what's going to happen if they don't live up to it. So that's what you do. You build up that self-esteem, and then very important is to be careful not to tear them down. To be careful not to tear them down. And this is one of my favorite quotes. The source number 12 from Rav Shlomo Aviner in his Pirkei Chinuch. Very simple, very straightforward, but again, one of those things that people violate routinely. He says, a great teacher has written that the way one talks to a child must be the same as the way one talks to an older person. He's very big on this in general, Rav Aviner, when he's giving advice for teaching and for parenting. He's very big on this idea that if you wouldn't be allowed to do this to an adult, you're not allowed to do it to a child. So for example, there's a discussion about teachers confiscating things in the classroom. And Rav Aviner says, you couldn't steal from an adult. What gave you the right to go take that away from the child? Obviously, there are rules in a classroom. If there's something that the child's not allowed to have, you have to have a procedure for dealing with that. But you can't just walk up to someone and take something away. And look what you're teaching the child if you do. So he says the following over here. If a guest were to put his feet up on the couch with his shoes on his feet, right? This is in Canada. So he says if he has his shoes on, he puts his shoes up on the couch. We wouldn't say, have you lost your mind? How could you put your dirty shoes on a clean couch? Put your feet down immediately. If you do this even one more time, right? You're not going to do that to the guest in your house. You might find a way to say, there's actually a place here for your feet. It would be really nice if we would use that. You might find some other way. We would turn to him gently and say, I'm concerned the couch might get dirty. So his point is that the things that we say when we're talking to the kids are things we would never say to an adult. Now, look, the reality is that if the adult came over to your house and did this all the time, you probably would say it to the adult. Like there would come a point where you just break because you're dealing with this entirely too frequently. But but I think the point that he's making is critical in terms of this whole self-esteem discussion. Because when you yell at the child, you tear down the child's self-esteem. That's what it does. The child has now been yelled at by the person whose opinion matters most. So this is a big deal. This point I think that he's making when you talk about children who have this sibling rivalry that involves their frustration with themselves. That's what you have to watch out for, is don't feed into that frustration they have with themselves. A couple of other points as we get to the end of our time. I'm not sure exactly. Oh, we are definitely getting to the end of our time. You got to talk to them about how great it can be, about what success looks like. There's a Gemara in Sanhedrin, which I didn't bring because I got to the end of my page, so that was it. But it's a Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Beis Amud Aleph, where Hashem says to Yeravam, I want you to repent. Yeravam ben Nevat is one of the worst people in Jewish history. He is the one who is credited with splitting the northern and southern kingdom, creating this breakaway kingdom, so that you had Yehuda in the south and Yisrael in the north. And Hashem goes to him and says, if you do tshuva, if you repent, as the Gemara portrays it, you, David, and I will walk together in Gan Eden. That's what he says to Yeravam. Look how wonderful it can be. To which Yeravam's response is, okay, but who walks first? That's Yeravam's response, and it goes south from there. But the point is, you paint a picture of how good things can be, what success will look like. And teach them to recognize when they're frustrated due to lack of success elsewhere. Teach them to recognize when they're tired, when they're hungry, when they're stressed. We have a principle, ein meratzin la'adam b'shas kaso. You can't try to satisfy somebody when he's angry. You can't do it. And they have to know that for themselves. They have to learn to recognize for themselves when they're in a position where you just have to disengage. Get out of it, because you're not going to be able to deal with this. So I think that's an important point as well. And my last point is, teach them generosity, to teach them to be generous. A remarkable idea that I'm going to bring into just like 2 minutes, and I think it may be something that I have to contribute. Hashem decides he's going to destroy the world. He's going to flood the world in order to ruin it, right? What's the sin that leads to that? Hamas, right? Hamas is taking things from others, taking human beings, taking things, taking money, whatever it is, with violence, saying, that's mine, I want it. That's what Hamas is. What is it that makes Hashem decide he's never going to destroy the world again? No, that's the sign that Hashem gives. Carbon. Noach and his family come out of the boat. Noach owns the animals on that boat like no human being has ever owned anything on this planet. Those animals exist. They're alive because Noach was righteous. That's why they exist. Otherwise, the whole world would have been destroyed. Noach preserved the animals on the boat for a year. Whatever that means, however he did this, feeding all of the different animals on the boat, leave aside the logistical questions, they're solving them in Kentucky. The Noach manages to save the animals in his merit and by his sweat. No one has ever owned anything like Noach. And what's the first thing he does when he comes out of the boat? Planting the vineyard is later. The first thing Noach does when he comes out of the boat is he says, God, I want to give this to you. Never mind that God doesn't need it, right? That's not the point. Noach wants to give. And Hashem looks at that and says, wow, human beings can learn. What do you know? They can be generous. I'm not going to destroy the world again. You've demonstrated that you can achieve something. And it's something huge, and it fits into a greater picture of Sefer Bereshis that we don't have time for right now. But that's what the child needs to learn. The child needs to learn generosity. And generosity includes generosity to the sibling.
That's your hint?
I think so.
That's good.
I haven't seen it anywhere. Thank you. You can use it. That to me is very important, that the child learn to be generous with the sibling. So again, we've said an awful lot of things. I hope some of them are in some sense useful. Recognizing that so much of parenting really is just the common sense piece of it. But the key, I think, is recognizing why the sibling relationships matter. The fact that it's the forming of their relationships with the world, the importance of the utility and the relationships they're going to form as siblings, as allies to each other. And I'm not going to go through everything because I can't possibly do it, and we're really at deadline for the next shiur, which is coffee and halacha. So you can catch the recording and do the summary. That way, I do want to know, because I forgot to mention it in the beginning, but this shiur was sponsored anonymously in memory of Devorah Bat Leib Halevi. So the next shiur is up, coffee and halacha. Thank you so much.
What's happening in Kentucky?
Oh, they built a Noah's Ark replica.
Oh, yeah. Okay.